Welcome to Three Food Memories. I'm Savva. Our guest this episode of Three Food Memories is a writer, actor, my chum, Effie Stefanidis.
Good one. That's my character's name.
My guest, let me do it again. My guest, yeah. But if I do that, I can't see.
Just
for
a
this.
bit.
Yeah, that's cool. Just because I'm getting it clearly, but it could be better.
Yeah. Okay. Welcome to Three Food Memories. I'm Savva. Welcome to Three Food Memories. I'm Savva. My guest this episode of Three Food Memories is writer, actor,
Don't worry.
Our guest this episode of Three Food Memories is actor, writer, and my chum, Mary Coustas. Our guest this episode of Three Food Memories is actor, writer, and my chum, Mary Coustas. Good? Let's go. Libon. Our guest on this episode of Three Food Memories is an actor, writer, late-in-life mum, taboo tackler, truth teller, hope giver, and someone I call my fill-another.
Oh.
Born and raised in a Greek family in Melbourne at a time when the city was home to the world's second-largest Greek-speaking community, her work in theatre, TV, writing and music pulses with unmistakable Hellenic heart and humour. Like the ancient Greek storytellers, she can have you in stitches one moment and hold you... Let's do that again. Like the ancient Greek storytellers, she can have you in stitches one moment and hold a mirror to your heart the next. To quote her iconic alter ego and cultural queen, Effie, "My parents came here with nothing and raised me to be everything." How embarrassment? Far from it. In her latest book, MaryPause, she chronicles her menopause journey, showing us that menopause is not only a biological milestone, but a true rite of passage. Mary Coustas, hello, good thanks.
Exactly. Hi, Savva. How
Welcome.
are you?
I'm good. Welcome to Three Food Memories. Now, I want to congratulate you. You are our 10th guest on our 10th episode. And I think of a very, very famous quote or verse from the Bible, John 10, chapter 10. "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." And that's exactly what you've done with MaryPause.
Well, it didn't feel like that at the beginning, but, I'm a lemonade maker. No matter what I get chucked, I've got to try add some sweetness, at least some jokes, and maybe, some sort of enlightenment through the darkness, So, yeah, I had a terrible time with menopause, but then I had a terrible time with racism, and that built a career for me. So, I'm good at taking bad stuff and turning it into something good.
You've shown us that menopause is not something we should fear or get lost in. Rather, you invite us to embrace this stage, to expand rather than to shrink. Is that what you did with your own menopause experience?
Yeah, not at the time. At the time, I was completely ill-prepared. I didn't know what I was feeling was due to menopause. I'd missed perimenopause because I did 23 IVFs in that decade. So I didn't get the ugly, bloodied trailer that most women get during their 40s with perimenopause. So I just cut straight to the movie. And because I became a mum at 49, I thought what I was feeling, because I became a mum and then hit menopause, what I was feeling was due to the fact that I was a new mum. And then the pandemic hit, and then I thought the world was going through menopause. So I siphoned a lot of the things that I was feeling, like my heavy-hearted, nature, which was not typically that, my heart palpitations, my anxiety to the pandemic. And then when we started to come out of that, I wasn't coming out of those symptoms that I was suffering through. And I came to my own conclusion that it had to be menopause because I was eradicating everything else it could have been. And as a woman, you're accustomed to a lot of discomfort physically. Because, from periods onwards and then pregnancy, or at least trying to get pregnant, and then after giving birth, it's just a very fraught physical experience that has a lot of awe attached to it and a lot of miraculousness attached to it, but it's arduous. And I felt for the first time in my life so burdened in a way that I'd never felt before. So I'd gone to a doctor, and my doctor was reluctant to tell me it was menopause. So I had to
Why was
pretty
he
much
reluctant?
look. I think they're often putting it down to maybe depression rather than depletion. I was depleted. As I say in the book, Elvis had left the building, and hormones are king. We don't know enough about them, but they're king. And the show couldn't go on because Elvis was not there. So I had to insist on my doctor. At this point, I'm in my late 50s, and I'm insisting to my female doctor that she check my hormones because I'm pretty sure it's menopause. Because there are so many symptoms, often people are experiencing different ones.
Had your doctor been through her own?
No, I suspect she was going through it.
Right. So there's no one. So it's kind of the blind leading the blind.
Yeah, and it's not intended to be that, but they do very little studying on menopause at medical school. So you've got to go to a doctor that's shown interest in it, essentially.
So this is what I'm discovering. Menopause is a very potent and human experience. And up until recently, as you've just said, there's not a lot of it in literature. There's not a lot written about it or researched on it.
No.
So it's been written out almost much the same way as the Virgin Mary has been written out of, the Holy Trinity, which is strange because she did all the heavy lifting.
And women do. We're strong. We're strong because we have to be, because there's a lot thrown at us, both in terms of wanting to, become mothers for the ones that do. I thought my heavy lifting was over with IVF. I thought I'd pretty much done a decade of a lot of heavy lifting.
So we're talking the Da Vinci Code here, aren't we?
Yeah. It was a mystery that I had to solve on my own. I felt pretty isolated. And for the first time in my life, I retreated. Normally when I have a problem, I reach out and I look for answers. And I felt completely alone with this because it was something I couldn't get my head around because my head wasn't in the game. You are brain fogged a lot of the time. And so I just felt like it was something I needed to solve. Look, I thought it was grief, what I was feeling. That was the thing that overwhelmed me more than any of the other symptoms, more than the heart palpitations, more than the anxiety was the grief. And because I'd lost a child, I was accustomed to grief. So I thought, but it's a steroided version of it. So yeah, it was a horrible, horrible time. And as soon as I could identify it as menopause, and once that was confirmed by the blood test that came back, and then I thought, well, I know what it is now. Now I can, go about sort of getting treated for it, and it's not difficult. You've just got to put the hormones back in. That's what helped with me.
Why did the diagnosis take so long?
Well, it's a bit of a taboo subject. Less so now. We're really in a good swing with it, I think, at the moment. There's a lot of people talking about it that weren't talking about it 10 years ago. People like Oprah are doing specials on it, and a lot of the American doctors have become superstars as well as the UK doctors. Naomi Watts is a very close friend of mine. She's written a book about it. She was speaking very openly about it, and she's got a business called Stripes, which is all about dealing with menopause and on that topical level, with lubes and moisturizers and all those fun things. And Halle Berry, people like that have started businesses to address the whole menopause thing. And all of these women came to it because they were lost in it as well. And they needed solutions. So they've gone about trying to educate, a global audience about menopause and allowing it to still be sexy. It's a really weird thing. It's a complicated thing because women have always spoken about feeling invisible during this era and, this phase, this natural part of life, this midlife. And I think it's because, one, we retreat because we don't feel like our powerful selves. Two, because not enough is spoken about or written about in regards to this. And when you stop making eggs, you feel like, I'm not relevant, or men won't look at me the same way, or I'm not productive in the way that I was designed to be anymore. And yet there's such a liberated opportunity in that time, as long as you're feeling okay physically and psychologically during that era.
Do you
So-
think if we look back at at caveman, cavewomen times, do you think that's what women did when their bodies went through menopause? They retreated, they pulled out?
Yeah, or they were dying, literally. We're living longer. So, women, the death, the average age of death was so much, what's the word I'm trying to find? See, women didn't live as long. Men didn't live as long back then. So I don't know whether they had to deal with it. Can I say that again? Can you ask the question again?
If we look back to caveman, cavewomen time, is that what women did when their bodies went through the menopause?
I think they retreated at every point in their lives. They retreated when they had children. They knew that they needed to conserve energy and they needed to be supported by other people in the village or the community. So I think women know that when they're feeling vulnerable physically, that they need support. I think with menopause, they didn't survive long enough to get on the other side of it because of the we're living so much longer now. So it's become a bigger thing now. Also, I never felt like women had the opportunity to talk about those things, whereas now we have a lot of avenues to discuss this sort of stuff. So I'm hoping it's going to really help eradicate it as a massive issue for women.
The book's been out a couple of weeks now?
Yeah.
How's the book been received?
Yeah, people love it. And I think what I'm most proud of is, there are quotable things in the book. So people can put language. And I think if I do anything really well, it's that. I'm able to take hard things and put them somewhere where people feel like they can manage them and repeat them and understand them in succinct, funny, quotable ways. And it also speaks to men. And I think even though it's happening to women, the fallout of menopause not being dealt with has a lot of effects on the men in their lives and the work colleagues and the children, because they're watching someone they're close to going through something difficult and they don't know how to help. So I'm a big fan of speaking to everyone, even though the issue is mainly a female one.
Before we get into your food memories, and they're those of a very good Greek girl, every single one of them. If menopause was a dish on the menu, would it be a hamburger with a lot or a combination chow mein?
Oh, wow. I'd say a hamburger with a lot, because it is a lot. There's nothing exotic about it. I think once you get your mouth around it or your head around it, you can digest it. But trying to manage this big thing that's oozing, well, not a lot of liquid when you're going through menopause, but yeah, it is a lot. But yeah, it's a dish that most of us don't even know we're trying to consume.
Your first food memory, this is a beautiful one. This is your mother and daughter. So 2 generations, you're wedged in the middle, and they do this thing called baking together.
Yeah.
Describe the scene.
Well, my mum's a great cook, and so my daughter spent a lot of time with my mum. I mean, my mum is, I would have to say, the most successful person I've ever met. And she's really happy. She's really healthy. She has great relationships with, a variety of different age groups. She is involved in her community. She's the president of the Florina Aristoteles Club, the female club, and which I tried to talk her out of. I said that those things never end well. You end up losing a lot of friends doing this community work, because the fallout had been pretty enormous for a lot of people that she knew that had been involved. Like Greeks running their own show. You get a lot of Greeks involved in the one thing and it's chaos, right? Certainly when that's the main thing that they've got left to focus on. But it's worked out really well for her. She's got a lot of my peers as besties of hers. She lives a street away from my brother's brilliant cafe in Melbourne, and that she helped establish by accident. She was really depending on the rent coming from this milk bar back then in Richmond, because my dad died when she was pretty young. She was only 47, 48 when my dad died. So she was widowed at a very young age. So she really was dependent on that rent. And then the guy who was renting the milk bar from her stopped paying his rent. So she came up with the brilliant idea that she should go in and try resuscitate it and then get somebody else in there to run it. Well, what happened was people loved her in the community so much, and it went from a milk bar that my brother art directed into this gorgeous place. And then she started cooking breakfast for herself, and tradesmen would come in and go, that smells nice. Oh, yes, I'm making myself an omelette. Oh, can you make me one? Yeah, okay. Suddenly we're cooking food now. And it became this hugely successful pulsating community thing in the Richmond area, and it's right next to the MCG. So we got a lot of the Richmond football team and the Melbourne Storm that would come in there and buy their stuff, and it expanded, and now it's this fully fledged, brilliant cafe called Rowena Corner Store. It's the only shop on a residential street, and people absolutely adore it. And it got bigger than my mum eventually, so now it's got like 12 staff at every shift, and my mother goes there and has her coffee and her orange juice every morning and walks around like sort of Al Pacino and this short little powerful figure, and knows everybody and kisses babies and has watched children grow up through that shop, and is so happy with her life and her independence and her capacities and her heart, and she's very content.
So the baking.
Yeah. Well, this is how the baking started. So they used to bake a lot when Jamie was little, and then my mother decided to start baking and for the shop as a business with Jamie, my daughter, who's now 12. And so from when they were little, they would make little Greek, sweets and sell them to the shop as a business. It's a weird partnership, that one, because my mother does all the work, pays for the ingredients, and my daughter gets all the profits. So I don't know how that works. But they say partnerships are fraught. Well, not this one. And so then that got my daughter really addicted to baking. And so the two of them from a very young age, from when my daughter was little, and I used to get her one of those really high chef's hats, which look so cute, and she would stand on a box, and while my mother would teach her how to make these little sweet things, because they're both so sweet together. They've got, such a great relationship. My daughter always says, "Mama, don't be upset, but I love Yaya Boo the most." And I'm like, that makes me really happy. So yeah, my daughter started baking for a friend of mine who's got a great place in Neutral Bay, and she makes cakes for her, and now she's going to start making cakes for the cafe next door. And, it's brought out a real entrepreneurial spirit. Meanwhile, the business in Melbourne is run still by my mother very happily. "I've got some dosh for you. Oh, yeah, don't you worry. We're the rich, I tell you, rich." So I love that relationship between the two of them.
Describe the synergy between them.
Well, my daughter's quite strong. She likes to run the show, and my mother is very accommodating. If you want a great sous chef, you want my mum. Nothing so, she's used to the temperaments of these, highly strung chefs. So when my daughter's doing something, and "All right, Dimitra, you're right, I do it like that," even though my mother's supposed to be teaching her. So they've got a beautiful rapport together. I've got so many videos of when Jamie was little and they were doing cooking together, and it's my mother's been a huge influence on my daughter.
Where do you fit into this scene?
I am a videographer.
You're sitting in the
and I'm an interviewer at times when I ask about how they're making it or what ingredients are involved, but I'm just an audience member to a beautiful love story.
Do you eavesdrop their conversations? Well, you've captured them on camera.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that they talk about?
Okay, well, separate to the baking, they play a lot of cards. And sometimes my daughter will cheat, and I'm not okay with that. And my mother tells me that I'm wrong to think that it's a bad thing. "Oh, no, girls have to be a bit sly. Otherwise, the downhill will take you." In Greek, this makes sense. That will take you and you'll get lost in the current of naivety. Girls need to be thinking strategically. So my mother encourages even something like cheating as a positive in my daughter, that she shouldn't just be just this innocent little thing that just accepts everything. She should be actively involved in a better outcome.
This memory speaks to me, and because I know you, it speaks to me about your ability to sit back, observe, and to archive for experiences for future work. in particular, I'm thinking about one of your recent works, This is Personal. Tell me about that piece of work.
Well, that was the piece of work I was always avoiding, a bit like doing tax or your BAS. I was like, yeah, I'll get to that eventually. And then too many people that I'm close to were like, you should be doing a bit more Mary. You haven't done Mary yet.
Why were you avoiding Mary?
Well, because I didn't really feel like an actress when you're playing yourself. Like I felt like, well, why would I give them me when I can give them these characters? And so it didn't feel like acting enough, I suppose. Also because I wanted to maintain distance between me and the audience in terms of what they knew about me, because I wanted them to believe whatever I was portraying in the other pieces of work. So, but then I wrote a memoir that really was pretty much a personal and psychological pap smear, I suppose. I exposed everything in the book before this one, which was called All I Know. So I felt like, okay, well, they know a lot about me. And 60 Minutes had picked up on a story that was publicizing the book that The Good Weekend had run with. It was before Jamie was conceived, and it was about the loss of my other daughter, Stevie. So that book talked a lot about life and death, and it was a love letter to my daughter who passed, and it was hugely well received, and yeah, The Good Weekend ran with it as a 5-page extract, and they put me on the cover. And 60 Minutes, the team from 60 Minutes had read that on the Saturday, and then Monday they called saying, well, we want to tell the story on television. And so they did 2 stories on that. And so by then I was everything was public knowledge at that point about me.
The knowledge is out there, though.
Yeah.
At 70 Minutes on stage.
Yeah.
Performing a piece of work that you've written about yourself.
Yeah.
Surely there's waves in it where you go, shit, I've gone too far here.
Yep. Yes, totally. So when I was putting the piece together, the Opera House were looking to do 3 one-woman shows, and they approached me to do a show. And I thought, great, I'll do a character piece. And they said, no, as you. I was like, oh, God, how do you do that? And then my best friend is a great movie producer, and she's like, it's time to do Mary. It's time to do Mary. And I was like, yeah. And then my husband was like, you need to start putting yourself out there a bit more. Stop hiding. You've already given them everything. Like, put it in a form that you can entertain them with and touch them with, live.
Wasn't he worried that you were going to expose him as well?
Oh, God, no. He's got nothing to hide. He's like, well, 60 Minutes got everything, so you might as well bring some laughs to it. So, yeah, and so we put together This is Personal, and it was one of the most difficult things I've had to do because, of course, it was bringing the story from the very beginning of my life all the way to now, and it was what shaped me. Essentially, the characters that I grew up with, the relatives that were great storytellers and great characters that I was dying to play, and how, my mind was always looking to capture these gems and put them somewhere where they mattered, not only to me. And so, yeah, the show really started with my working class roots and my relationship with my father, and how my father's philosophical lens informed mine, and the Greeks of that generation who are heroes in my mind, that were such natural entrepreneurs that backed themselves and took themselves over to the other side of the world to make a better future for children they hadn't even conceived, that came with nothing and built a lot and left a lot behind and created these great children that could benefit from that spirit of theirs, and they could go on to do more and more. And so I felt like I was a beneficiary of that philosophy and that courage. And so it was a love letter to my dad and my mum and that generation. And then it morphed into how I was able to connect with people like Nick Giannopoulos and create pieces of work that would change the social landscape of this country, with Wogs Out of Work and then Acropolis Now, our sitcom. And so how acting essentially saved me many, many times. It was the ambulance that I rang when things got tough, where I could go hit the stage and cleanse myself and the audience at the same time by putting all of those experiences somewhere that made it more digestible.
When did you realize you had the number to that audience, to that ambulance rather?
Well, when I was going through a very, very hard time at school, I was like, again, I retreated. I didn't want to tell my parents about all the racism and the bullying and all of that because my dad was sick from before I was born. And during that era, particularly when I was about, 10 or 11 or 12, my dad was really unwell. He'd clinically died when I was 11, came back to life miraculously against all odds. And we're good against the odds, my family, I've since discovered. So I didn't want to take home what I was dealing with at school. So I kept it to myself. And yet there was a little portion of me, and there's always been a portion of me that's dedicated to what am I going to do with this? Where do I put this? This isn't just for negative purposes. Like, as much as the other 90% was feeling the brunt of it, there was a part of me that thought, surely this has been given to me for a reason. I'm going through this for a reason. So that 10% was waiting in the wings to find where I could put it. And then I started doing the school plays and the musicals, and I'd gone to school with the Seberanos. Kate Seberano would sing at every school assembly, and her brother Phil and I were in a lot of the musicals, as was Kate. And so when I hit the stage, I just thought, this is where I put things. This is my place where I put things, where I can put my feelings, where I can be seen, where I can be part of something that the Greeks invented. So it culturally made sense, even though I didn't know anyone that had done something creative like that in my community, my Greek community. And then my dad had bought me a typewriter when I was 7 and said, you need to write, start writing. And so I'd be tapping away. And then I had an English teacher that said, oh, you're a very good creative writer. You should do something with that. And then my drama teacher said, there's something here. You should keep an eye out on that. And those were enough things. And I've been really lucky that those same voices have appeared in different people throughout my life that are almost seeing something before I've seen it, going, you should do a one-woman show as yourself. Or when I was going through that terrible time after the loss of our daughter, George would say, you should write a book about this. And then I would write emails to all my friends who lived on the other side of the world in the middle of the night when I was grieving and lost and couldn't sleep. And I would write these love letters to my daughter or via my friends and, keep them up to speed because, they were working or I was asleep when they were awake. And so there is this sort of beautiful poetry that was happening, this painful poetry that was happening between me and the people that I love the most and the people that I miss the most, like my dad, who wasn't there for a lot of what I'd been challenged by. And so I was like, where do I put this? And so I put it in a book, and then I put it in a stage show, and then I put it in speeches that I do, keynotes, and now MaryPause. And I just think these can be turned into assets. These lemons can be lemonade, and to heal me first and foremost. But also I know that there are a lot of me's out there that have lost a lot, whether it's, innocence or opportunities or whatever, because they've been burdened by the things that life burdens us with.
You said earlier that you were lucky that these voices appeared. I'm thinking that you were lucky that you were open to hear them.
Yeah, well, I'm always listening. I'm a bit like Alexa or Siri. I'm always listening for, what I need. And I love human beings more than anything. I wish that I could love hiking as much as I loved human beings. Or
I'm the same with sport.
Yeah. I do love cooking, though, I must say. Not as much as human beings, but so I'm forever wanting to connect. I love connecting, and I love using what I get from people as a way to stay optimistic about the world.
There is something about human beings, isn't there? They're like these puzzles. You speak about it in the book, like a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
Aren't they? You complete one side only to realise the other side is just like incomplete.
Yeah.
So you've got to go back and work on that side, and you're constantly cracking The clue is cracking a puzzle.
Yeah. Well, I think because we're multiple things at the one time. I think for convenience purposes, we like to think, oh, that person belongs in that category, even though we hate being categorized ourselves, right? So there's that
But that's an important
hypocrisy.
part of belonging, isn't it? Isn't it too, Mary? Being categorized into a group, being
Yeah.
part of something.
Yeah, but you can be part of that, but part of something else at the same time. Like identity's built on many different things, and belonging's built on simple things. I think, we're all full of contradictions, and we all bring dimension to who we are. And I'm interested in not just the one side of someone. I want to find backstory. I want to understand motivation. I want to understand sexuality. I want to understand, what's happened to people to shape them. That's always been the stuff I've been interested in, and that's why I chose to be an actress, because I want to portray those things and I want to use those things. But there are blurred lines between what I do for a living and who I am. Like it is such a huge part of me and what I find connects me to others. So, that's the Rubik's Cube that I'm interested in, is trying to work out how we can work together better, how we can accept each other more without it just being a surface thing, how we can, empathize more. And I think with life and with time, it makes us, if you've dealt with the pain and if you've tried to put it somewhere, healthy for yourself, then it can make you a much better human being.
Your second food memory is the men barbecuing at Easter.
Yes. Well, I wouldn't say barbecuing. I would say putting a lamb on the spit and manually turning that thing for hours and hours every Greek Easter.
So the men of your tribe would do it manually. They didn't have the motorized.
Well, back then it wasn't in existence. Back in the 60s and 70s, it was a wheel from a bike with something attached, and they would turn it, and that would turn the lamb, like a spit, obviously, round and round, and they didn't mind. We had an uncle, my dad's sister's husband, who was a real foodie. He loved food, and everything was about food. And my father would despair because he'd want to have a conversation about something important, and he couldn't. He'd say, Yanni, his name was, he would say, Yanni, what do you think about what's happening politically? Oh, in Greek, he'd say, oh, they're all, you can't trust anyone, and they're just trying to make money out of us. That would be the length of that conversation. What did you think about what's happening, with the soccer team? Oh, what, they're winning one minute, they're losing the next. I'm not bothered with that sort of stuff. He'd try to talk to him about philosophy. What do you want me to say? Life's tough. That's it. Okay. And then he'd say, watch this. Yanni, what did you eat today? Well, then we'd get a 20-minute monologue about Yanni and what he'd prepare and how he'd had kidneys with a passata sauce with onions and garlic in the morning with a bottle of beer. And that's the exact opposite of how my dad ate, because my dad was a heart patient, so he wasn't eating that for breakfast. But Yanni would launch into a 20-minute monologue about the ingredients and how delicious it was. So he was sort of our food guy. And Yanni, all you had to do with Yanni every Easter was set him up with a little table with meze on it and some, tsipuro, which is our version of grappa. And Yanni would be happily turning that wheel for hours on end. And do you remember they would put the lemon?
Yes.
With a fork, and they would dip it in olive oil, salt, pepper, and oregano, and they would continuously dab that lamb on the skin so that it would dry up and be crunchy and moisten it and give it flavor. And that was what Yanni would do. So all the men would sit around and chat, and Yanni would be turning that wheel, and the women would be preparing, the other food inside. And it was often at our house, and I would be setting tables, and the music would be on, and the smoke, would be the delicious smell of it would just, be the smell of the neighborhood.
What were you observing outside of what they were doing?
Well, their characters, their dynamics, the theatre of it all, the anticipation, the kids all playing. It was a very happy memory for us. And it just, we were that house that people would come to in order to have those occasions. We had a beautiful backyard, and we were hosting constantly.
But the men stood out in this particular scene, didn't they?
Yeah.
Why did they stand out to you?
Well, because, they were involved in something like cooking, which was really nice. The conversations were always great, obviously in Greek, but, Greek was my first language. So I loved how they used humor and intelligence and how bouncy it all was. It just sort of felt very natural to have all these different voices like a symphony being surrounded by, a lamb on the spit. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I've always gravitated to men. I love men. My audience, you've seen all my shows.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It's not, it's 50-50 and sometimes tipped over by the gay community even more so. I've worked really well with men, in the early part of my career. I was always the only girl. And so I am very interested in their point of view. I don't always agree. I think that sometimes they're conveniently oblivious to what, women need and the power that we bring. But I think I represent in that male dynamic. I think I can represent, the chicks, my pussy posse really successfully. And I don't think I'm a threat to them. I think they know that I'm an asset when we work together and that we've been able to do some pretty impressive stuff together. I've been working with the writer that did my first one-woman show with me and was a script editor on Acropolis Now. Chris helped me. He edited MaryPause, my book, and he did This Is Personal with me because he's a structural genius, and I didn't want the story to be predictable or chronological, so I really needed him to come in and help me put it together in a way that was unexpected, that there would be a lot of surprises in how things got revealed in that show. And he also did my latest Effie show, Up Your Selfness, with me, which you saw, because I wanted to walk a dangerous line with a lot of...
Very dangerous.
And we did. And we did. It was a show full of tension and release, which is, I think, comedy at its best. So, yeah, Chris, in the acknowledgement that I gave in my book, I'm sure he has ovaries. And I'm sure I have balls, I've been told. So between us, I think we blur that fluid line of, of the complicated nature of what makes us up. And I'm interested in, telling really rich, funny, informative, powerful, dramatic stories. And you need people that are really, really fleshed out in their own sexuality, identity, so that you can go to places that are unexpected.
These balls that you speak of, do you think they allow you to be myopic with men?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, I can play their game and possibly win. They don't play mine so successfully, but yeah, I just think,
Is it because you're seeing what they're doing, but they're not seeing what you're doing?
No, but they can't see what I'm doing because men are pretty sort of singular, whereas women are built in a way to be very, we're across multiple things at the same time. So we look at many things at the one time, whereas men are focused on one thing at a time. And that makes for a very different lens, a very different way of looking at the world. So, yeah, I'm interested in how they look at it. I marvel at how simplistic they can be. I find it comforting and frustrating at times. And they can't understand how women look at the world, because we're looking, in many places at once.
George, the best husband in the world, according to you.
Yeah. He's not that easy, but then I suppose neither am I.
He never got to meet your father before he died.
No.
What do you imagine their relationship would have been like had he?
Just before I met George, I was talking to my manager, who I've had from the beginning of my career, and is my most successful relationship. We're about 35 years in, and we're still killing it. She said to me, be careful you're not trying to find your dad in a man. I think you've got unrealistic expectations of what's possible. And because my dad was such an evolved human being, unexpectedly so. He was really, truly modern, profound, open. He was one of the most accepting people I'd ever met. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe I can't find that, because I did want a teacher. I do like someone that pushes me to evolve. And so George is that. He's not my dad, but he really can see more than I can at times, and pushes me towards things that are difficult. And he aids and abets me. And yet he's my biggest rival at times. We're like two heavyweight champions. When we fight, it's on. He's a strong man. He's had a big life, and I've met my match. And when it's great, it's unbelievable. And when we butt heads, it's on. But I can handle it.
So going back to the menopause, knowing what you know about men, your lived experience, you've written about them. How would you say they would navigate the change in their female counterparts if they were better informed and they had better information on menopause?
Men?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. Well, here's the thing. If you are totally committed to the person that you've married, if you still love them, and if you want the best for you as a couple and as a family, then it really matters that you know about menopause. Because sometimes men are the ones that can alert women to it. So we know that women's suicide rate peaks between the ages of 45 and 55. We know divorce rates peak between the ages of 45 to 55. So there are major consequences and I'm not saying it's solely due to menopause, but menopause is a really difficult thing that pushes you to the extreme if you're not across it. And for some women it's not difficult, but for plenty it is. So I think for men, I don't like to look at women as damsels in distress, but I think we are in major distress during menopause. And if they want to be the prince on the horse, that's the time. We probably don't need it before then. But if we're brain fogged and we don't know what is happening to us, and if we're lost because we've lost our hormones, and that causes every organ to be in deficit, and you feel ill-equipped to problem solve, and you are full of rage and full of confusion and full of panic, then someone that you love should be able to step in and go, hey, what about this? Or in a very proactive, beautiful, loving way, without judgment, be able to shine a light on something that it feels pretty dark at times.
In your book, there's a really sweet passage to the women who haven't started even perimenopause. And it's kind of like, here you go, I'm giving you the tools. What tools would you give the young blokes?
Well, I think that, these are things that are inevitable. If you're lucky enough to be alive at between the ages of, say, sometimes as early as late 30s, and there is no, when people say postmenopause, I'm like, what post? Those hormones aren't coming back. You know what I mean? Like, it's something that you live with, and you can live with successfully if you're dealing with it. I would say that, just expect it. When people say, no one told me that having children was hard, I'm like, you weren't listening. That's all people say. Yeah, okay, the benefits, and this, the benefits outweigh the hard stuff. But man, it's hard. Being a parent is hard. Conceiving is hard. Childbirth is hard. It's hard. We don't want to hear that because we don't want to talk ourselves out of doing it. Menopause is hard. And we don't want to hear that because it is something that there are no benefits for a male because the kids have been had or not. It is something that is happening to a woman's body. So it's, they're going through it. So the more we know about anything that's hard makes that hard thing so much easier. And I think a big part of healthy loving is, assisting people to get through the hard things and then celebrating the wins together. So that is a great opportunity to love well. And we all deserve to be loved well. So we need to be that for others as well. We can't just expect that just to be for us, because men go through a hard time in middle age as well, with their own hormonal challenges, which you can spot through piercings, tattoos, motorbikes, younger lovers, whatever. But yeah, I think men get lost in that time as well.
Whereas women retreat, men put themselves really out there, don't they?
Yeah.
Here I am. Speaking of putting themselves out there, I want to talk about Australia's, well, probably the world's favourite malaproppist, Effie.
Yes.
Through Effie, you've reshaped how Australia identifies belonging, and the gloriousness of being too much and up yourself. Where did she come from?
Well, I suspect she was always in me, because I felt like if I'm to be completely honest, I think I might have been Effie when I was living in Collingwood when I was a kid. Certainly very fashion forward, very into my hair. It was Susie Quattro hairstyle back then. I didn't commit to the buff. But certainly the confidence was always in me, and the community consciousness, and the being part of something super exciting and making hard things, part of my identity. I think Effie was always in me. But then I moved to the middle class, and then that was the Effie in me was my enemy. It made me too noticeable, I think. And so that was slapped out of me momentarily.
What was your intention with Effie in the very, very beginning?
My intention was to create heroes out of the community that had emboldened me. So I felt like there was a lot about how I grew up that was common to so many, and yet those characters were not visible on any platform, not in advertising, not in music, not on television did I see people like the ones that I was enamored with, the ones that I was born from. So I sort of felt like it was my job to start putting that out there. And luckily, I then met Nick Giannopoulos and George Kapanaris and Simon Palomares, and they too felt the same. So then Wogs Out of Work was created, and then that changed everything.
Isn't it interesting that what you were picked on at school, what were you made to feel not yourself and excluded, is the one thing that sort of gave you the biggest lift up?
Well, I think that we're talking about this so much more now, about difference being, our superpower, and being the asset that we can run with. We talk about authenticity nonstop. We talk about resilience nonstop. We talk about, diversity a lot now, thankfully.
But
individuals.
we grew up with that stuff, though.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Well, but the words weren't there.
Right.
We didn't know, the categories weren't there in a positive way to be able to put it there.
Do you think we
somewhere.
needed them?
Well, we might not known we needed them. I know at times I wished I had, thank God for Madonna, thank God for George Michael,
Oh, yes.
thank God for these people, but they were international stars, and they were music stars, and they were art directed brilliantly, and they gave us soundtracks that changed the world, and certainly our world. But yeah, if you don't have what you need, then you need to go and create it. You can't just sit there and complain, well, it's not there. Well, make it happen. And we're able to. And there was a lot of momentum. Once Wogs Out of Work hit and became the smash that it was on stage, then opportunities came with that. Acropolis Now, these kids need to do something on television. Acropolis Now was born. And then Effie was born out of that in such a huge way that she, opened up all these doors that continue to open still for me because of that character, because she became my mouthpiece. She became my little furry toy that I could put out there as supposedly like this bauble of balls and spunk and playing with language, and not letting the fact that she was uneducated, working class, female, and all of those things get in her way, that they were actually the things that made her fantastic.
But I will say, though, in the recent show, Up Yourselfness, she becomes very educated. So while you created Effie, Effie gave you a megaphone to what you wanted to say.
Totally. Totally. And I use that megaphone at every opportunity.
I mean, let's really go, because I've never been. I mean, I've enjoyed all your performances, but Up Yourselfness, I was left. I couldn't laugh. My jaw was just on the ground. But every line, every inclination, every bit, everything that you said had me floored. I mean, she tackled every ism that we're facing under the sun with such class, didn't she?
She did. Well, I felt like I needed to address the elephant in every room. And isms have built my career. And the latest ism, which is, like the whole political correctness and the woke thing, is something that for a person that uses freedom of speech very liberally, like I always have in my work, and I just felt like that was a condom people were trying to put on expression. And I argue both sides. I argue freedom of speech and I argue political correctness. Of course, freedom of speech wins in that argument, but you get to hear the whole story. And Effie, if anyone should be worried about possibly getting cancelled, even though in the deepest part of her, she believes she's cancel proof. But according to what the sport of the day is, which is cancelling people, that's the new, pickleball. Like, let's put Effie there as a possible person that could be cancelled because she's never been good with language, and language has become everything now where we're having to really be careful about the words we use. There are new words we need to be using and we need to use them like this. Well, Effie's never been good with English. She's always said the wrong thing in her own way, but her intention has always been good. And that's what she's standing up for, and that is we're humans first. And if there's one thing we know about human beings, and that is they're flawed, they're clumsy, they're trying to make a joke about something. They're well-intentioned, most of them. They're trying to make a joke about something that's misread, or they haven't got the latest information on what we should be using, because that's changing, on such a regular basis. So I thought she was the perfect person to talk about all of that uncomfortable stuff. And the show does get uncomfortable at times, as you know. The show starts from an uncomfortable place. Immediately, like the third line in, I feel my audience go, whoa, okay, there was no foreplay. What? We're already there. But that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to say, okay, we're on. Let's talk about this.
But, well, separating you and the character, the writing made every single audience member feel welcome, no matter what their political stance was on the ism. Everyone was involved and everyone wanted to be part of it because they were laughing. It was roaring. And then when Effie did the audience engagement, people were desperate to be picked, weren't they?
I don't know why, but they love it.
Because everyone felt like they belonged. Like Effie had created this thing where no matter what you wore, no matter what you looked like, especially her with the big hair, they felt like that connection to her, and they felt seen.
Yeah, totally.
So what was the message that you wanted to deliver to the audience in Up Yourselfness through Effie?
I think it's the same message every time. I think maybe I've been pushing the same message
Agenda.
the whole time. And that is, we're individuals made up of a lot of different things, where you were born, who your parents were, what your cultural background is, what your sexual inclination is, where you were educated, what your job is, what your body looks like, what your, so at the end of the day, we need to be a lot more open-minded and a lot less judgmental because we've become reactors. We just refuse to think these days. Like it's, oh, God, do I have to think? Oh, that's hard. That hurts. Oh, I don't have the time to really think. Let me just react. That's easy. Let me just have an opinion based on stuff I really don't know about. We're not prepared to say, I don't know. We're not prepared to ask more questions. We're not prepared to trust our instincts. And I'm speaking very generally, right? But in terms of, say, social media has become, the spotlight for a lot of that lazy part of us. The one where, I didn't like them anyway, or or I know I like that, but I don't really understand it. I'm going to quote that, but I don't really know where it's coming from. So I suppose at the end of the day, I want people to be seen for, the human that they are in, all its glory and all its ugliness. And I want us to be free of that burden of having to be, one thing and one thing perfectly instead of many things that is complicated and flawed and interesting and all of those sorts of things. So I felt like that we did that with race with our shows. They got to know the characters. So then the messaging was in amongst the characters.
But you made these people not scary. You made them safe. You made them safe spaces.
Yeah.
Like, let's not fear the wogs. They're actually quite funny.
Yeah.
And they're just like us.
Yeah. And I'm not into the tokenism. I think that if people, I remember getting up at this political event many, many years ago in Melbourne, and you remember that when the word tolerant was really new to the mix. It's like authentic now. And there was a political event. It was something like Harmony Day, something sweet like that. And Effie was going to get up and speak, and there was a politician that got up who was not ethnic, and spoke about tolerance and the importance of tolerance. And the word tolerance or tolerate feels like it's a bit of an effort. Like it's good in theory, but it's like, I have to tolerate that. Oh, God, I need to be tolerant and I have to put up with. In brackets, to me, that word sort of is put up with against what is natural or, I don't want to do it, but I better be. It's sort of onerous. So I've been listening to all this PC stuff, and this was before PC was really, having its moment. And I got up and I said, guys, just want to say, if you have to tolerate us, don't worry about it.
As Effie.
We're good.
As Effie.
Yeah. If it's an effort to be open-minded, when the benefits are so huge, to be open-minded is just to literally expand your own character and your capacities. It's actually the most exciting thing in the world to be open-minded.
And the audience's response?
And look, I tell you, the pollies were like, whoa, hold on, you just undermined what, like my speechwriter went to a lot of trouble to write that one-dimensional speech about, and I just spoke from my truth, which was,
which is Effie's
there's
truth.
so many benefits to us and to anyone that's different.
Define to anyone that's different.
Yeah, anyone that's, unique and special, and because we all are. But to find other flavors out there of what your taste buds are screaming for. This is why I love this podcast, because it's all about using food as a conduit into finding out about people. And if it wasn't for restaurants, and if it wasn't for us being lucky enough to live in such a diverse country where we can literally taste the flavors of all these, beautiful cultures, and characters are that for me. They're flavors of personalities and flavors of human beings. So if you're not open to us, well, if we have to force you to be tolerant of us, then maybe we should just go to the restaurants and don't worry about us. But then, humor and comedy is what's on the plate that I put out there, and everyone loves to laugh. And so I've been able to use, like you use food, I use comedy to introduce people to us.
Just let's go back to MaryPause. Now, you've been through MaryPause. Will Effie go through the Effie change or the hot flush havoc?
Yeah. Yes, Effie is going through that change. She's early on. She's perimenopause, of course, because we're twins but born over a decade apart. So while I'm in menopause, she's in beginning. She doesn't really know what's happening to her. She's just noticing that things are changing. And so I've got a brand new stage show called Frigid to Feral, which I'll be touring, throughout the country. And it'll be her trying to deal with these things that are happening and the effects they're having on her relationships and body and sex life and all of those things.
I'll be really curious to see the men folk in your audience and how they respond to this.
Yeah.
So it'll be a real eye-opener, won't it, Mary?
Oh, they love it. They
Yeah.
love the title. People are really keen. They can imagine how far she's going to go because Effie started off as this, virgin, one of the few that were left, certainly in public life. She was the virgin bride after all. And now she's gone for all those years. She was frigid. And now this window of what this animal that's come to life since her honeymoon, and she calls it Wolverine, that she discovered, has now had this very short window because guess what? The Sahara's moved in downstairs and her tolerance has faded and her rage has increased and she doesn't want to lose herself or her brilliant relationship. She's married to Dr. Shane Bradley Cooper. And so she doesn't want to watch things fall by the wayside.
So the writing is going to be out of control. You are ripping it with this one, aren't you?
It's a fun thing to write, actually, because it's very physical, and I love doing physical humor. And it's very relatable. I don't think, no matter where you're from, I think, age has this ability to erode us and to take off our gloss. And I will, like my own mother, try to stay as high gloss as possible right until my last breath. So, and I want Effie to do the same, but she'll talk about, this journey that she's going through and in a way that I think, will be super liberating for the audience and very entertaining.
Your third food memory, with Christmas around the corner.
Yep.
Not everyone has a fantastic Christmas. But your third food memory is based around the 7th Christmas after your father died.
Yeah.
Fell apart. Wheels fell off.
Wheels fell off. Wow, it was really hard. It was very, very hard. Look, when someone dies, you get all the attention. Everyone's there. And in the Greek culture, literally your home is physically open for people to come to and help and mourn with you and show their support for 40 days. The Greek coffees getting made, the little scotches, we know how to do that and we do it really well. We don't run away from death. We run towards it and we show our support because we know it's going to happen to us and we know that that's what we would want. So people that are close to you, whether that's friends or relatives or community members, flood the house. So you get all of that. And then the first, second, third Christmas, well, you're in deep grief. So of course it's going to be different. By the 7th, it's not a novel thing anymore. It's not this, you've been forgotten about. And you've to use a term that's been used a lot since the pandemic, it becomes your new normal to watch what used to be very festive events like Christmas Day or Easter, where it's filled with people. And then suddenly it's down to the three of you, my mother, my brother and me. Or in this particular case, on the 7th, my mother and I went to the cemetery in the morning on Christmas Day, lovely. Other people are opening their presents under a tree or,
it's kind of
raiding
that
the
Greek
stockings.
torture. We do that to ourselves, don't we?
Yeah, I get it. She wanted to do that. That was important for her. And I went. And then my brother, because we owned a bar / nightclub for many, many years. And the night before, I think we must have been open. And so my brother came out late morning from his bedroom and said, I'm going to Amanda's for lunch. That was his then girlfriend. After having been to the cemetery, after having had Christmases that were now down to 3, suddenly it was 2, me and my mum. And I just went, this is the worst feeling in the world, Christmas is tough anyway. And when you feel like you're completely alone with it and things aren't the way they're supposed to be, I just made a decision in that moment. I just thought, I'm not repeating this one ever again. I've got to change what Christmas can be because this is not working.
Did you have to reframe your grief, do you think?
My mum is fantastic. My mum is so not a burden. Christmas means nothing to me. I watch the carols by candlelight. I had a good time. I watched the Christmas movies. Nothing to me. So I said, who do I love that would be feeling like I'm feeling today? And that was my besties that had either lost a parent or never had a parent, or have fractured relationships with their own family, or are physically in another part of the world or another part of the country. So I just said, right, from now on, we're doing Orphans Christmas. Let's redefine it. Let's run with the chosen family. My brother jumped on board. Yep, okay, let's do that. Reached out to all my friends, and from the 8th Christmas onwards, it was just us. My mum, if it was in Melbourne, she was obviously included. She's really close to my friends. If it was in Sydney, because we decided to do it somewhere else, then she would be at home, happy in front of the telly, not depressed or anything like that. At least my kids are having a great time. I'm cool. I peaked last night, watching carols by candlelight. I'm good. And so, yeah, we redefined Christmas, and all of us would make different things, and we'd have a feast, and oysters were bought, and different toppings were put on oysters, and lamb was cooked, or turkey, or whatever it was that we were cooking, and a million salads and desserts, and suddenly there'd be a banquet, of edible, delicious
And people.
food and people that knew me, that I knew, that there was no hiding. We all knew that it was a complicated day and that we had each other and we would get through that way.
How do you celebrate with your family now? So it's not just Jamie.
Yep.
There's George's son, Thomas, from a previous relationship. You've also got Natalie.
Yes.
So how do you all get together now? How will you get together this Christmas?
Well, we mix because, we do Sydney and Melbourne. So this year we're going to go to Melbourne pre-Christmas, and Natalie's a child that who's now in her early 30s that we unofficially adopted in our family. That was a baby that was born a couple of doors down from us when my dad had died previously, years earlier. And my brother and I bought a warehouse in Fitzroy that we lived in, and we built my mother a new house. And there was this baby that was living a few doors up, and my mum said, I don't know what it is with that couple, that they mustn't have any help with that baby, and they're always putting it in the car and taking it out. And I might just say, well, I'm stuck here until my house is built, and maybe I can help them with their baby. So she approached Natalie's mama, and Natalie, like I said, was 10 months old, and said, don't you have parents that can help you with your baby? And Eleanor's parents had died only months earlier, and she said no. And my mum said, well, I'm stuck here while my children are building me a house, and I'll look after your baby. You don't have to pay me. And 33 years later, that baby's a full-grown woman. That's one of the biggest loves of our lives. So Natalie runs my brother's cafe, as well as has her own fantastic art career. There's my brother, there's my mother, there's a lot of my besties that are in Melbourne. My husband is very close. George is born on the same day as my mother, 20 years apart. So they're thick as thieves. My daughter, as you know, loves my mum more than anyone in the world. So we'll go to Melbourne. We'll do a big Melbourne Christmas with everyone, and then we'll come up here and we'll do another one with the Sydney people we love.
Let's talk about Dad for a second. You grew up knowing that your dad's death was imminent. It could have happened at any time.
Yeah.
Yet through all of this, you've had some enormous victories. You've always been up against the odds. Your dad dying, your struggle to break into television as a non-white Australian, living with George's custody battle.
Yeah.
Your IVF setback, your miscarriages. I mean, your resilience and ability to reinvent has really saved you. Which one of those experiences would you say nearly broke you?
Yeah, definitely the loss of my daughter. My daughter was stillborn, which was really you're in really traumatic territory when firstly you don't see something coming, and secondly when you never even dared to imagine something like that. And we've all got our traumas. For me, it was the antithesis of the the dream, and death and life arrived in the same moment. So my waters broke, and it took me 2 weeks to go into labor. I was hospitalized during that period in a maternity ward with mothers and their babies, and bunches of flowers and relatives, oohing and ahhing over these beautiful babies that were born in rooms next to me. And there I was, hoping that my daughter would survive, only having 10% amniotic fluid left. And expert after expert, specialist after specialist coming in and telling me what we would inherit if I went into labor. On that day, the following week, what compromises had been made to my daughter, yet my daughter was still alive. And so I had my brilliant doctor, VJ Roach, who would come in with an ultrasound every morning and every night before he'd leave and show me that she was still alive. And yet I knew that it wasn't looking good for us. But she was, as long as she was still alive, there was still hope. And then on one particular morning, I woke up and I knew without a doubt that that was the day that it was going to happen. And at about 5:00 that afternoon, I started feeling a clenching that I'd never felt before. And what I didn't know, because I hadn't done any of the birthing classes at that point, was that I was going into labor. And so my grief counselor, who was one of the most incredible humans I've ever met, was called, as was my doctor. And they came in. George was there. And they took us into a birthing suite. And my favorite midwife was with us. And essentially, I was told by VJ that my daughter was alive but wouldn't make it out of the birth canal alive, that she didn't have the lung capacity to survive that. And so that was very, very tough to hear that. But my body was happening, like I was in labor and I was about to birth her. And then, that was really confronting, the antithesis of the dream. And I'd already done 17 IVFs at that point. And so I didn't ever imagine I would be in that situation, yet 6 families or couples lose a child, have a stillborn every single day in this country. And I became one of those 6 on that particular day. And so my daughter was born. I was scared of what I would see, and she was perfect and beautiful, and she was placed on my chest. And I got the next 24 hours with her. And then even to complicate matters even more than that, I almost died myself because the placenta had adhered so aggressively that it was almost impossible to remove. So then I was taken, after I'd had some moments with her, she was placed next to me and I was whisked down into the operating theatre, and I had to have 3 blood transfusions to try remove the placenta. That bit you don't get in the movies. And then I went upstairs and I was told by my grief counselor that my mother held my daughter, which was so important. George, on the other hand, couldn't. It was just too much for him. And this is where my heart breaks for men. While he was in awe of how women are, even in the most difficult of circumstances, to be able to hold that baby and love our daughter, he couldn't bring himself to do that because he felt completely impotent. He felt like he couldn't save her. He couldn't save me from that. He couldn't save himself from that, because men feel like that's their role, that they've got to, be able to solve a problem, to be able to be of value. He stood and watched while this all happened, and completely devastated, as much as I was. And my heart broke for him because, he felt he couldn't do anything to help in that moment. And that was a very liberating moment for me, because I thought, he's not me. And yet he's in as much pain as I am. And that I can't judge him for not dealing with it the same way I am. If anything, it made it harder for me to do that, because I saw how excruciatingly difficult It was. He couldn't hold her. He couldn't look at her. And yet my mum was able to. And yet my girlfriends turned up the next morning and held her. And George said, I never understood the power of the sisterhood until I saw that. Yeah, it's not what we ever want, and I tried to shield my girlfriends from it because they were mothers themselves, and I knew that would be the most difficult thing for them, but they wanted to be there for me. And still, my bestie Susie says it was one of the highlights of my life. It was to hold Stevie. And to have that, she was able to turn a devastating result like that for me, and still understand how much beauty and honor there was in being able to do that in terms of our friendship. But as a mother, to have that experience, because her own mother had a stillborn. And so I think in many ways it brought her closer to her own mother, who was forever changed by that experience, because her own mother all those years earlier didn't have a beautiful grief counselor like I did that brought the baby to her, didn't have the doctor and the midwife that I had. So her own sibling had passed without being held by a family member. Her own mother had not held her own baby. And so here she was watching her best friend go through something like that, in many ways connected her to her own history and her own mother. So, that changed me forever, that experience. But it stopped me from swallowing the bitter pill, because I knew that there were many other families and couples that had gone through that. I knew that my daughter had fought like a champion for those 2 weeks against all odds, and managed to survive day after day until she couldn't any longer. I saw how supported I was. And so then I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And then finally, thanks to those closest to me who pushed me to turn it into a book, I was able to, expose the pain and around that, and to, in some ways, detoxify a taboo that most people don't dare to, think about or know anything about, or, and was able to, in many ways, support people that felt possibly unsupported during something so difficult.
Most people also would turn their back on their faith and their relationship with God. You did something quite interesting. When Jamie fell pregnant, you made a contract. When you fell pregnant with Jamie, or before Jamie was conceived, I can't remember the timing, but you made a contract with God and you said, God, if she's born, we're going to...
Yes, I went to a beloved church on the island of Tinos, which is next to Mykonos, which is great because you can party and pray at the same time. And I went there and I prayed that I would be blessed with a healthy baby. And in that moment, I said, I don't expect this to be a one-way street. If you bless me with a healthy child, I promise you I'll come back here to christen it. And we did. 72 of us went back, 5.5 months after Jamie was born, and went back and christened her at that same church, and partied like it was 1999 in Mykonos for the 5 days that we were there. So, yeah.
We have an MFK Fisher Serve It Forth tradition here at Three Food Memories, where our previous guests forwards you a dish. Gorgeous broadcaster Indira Naidu would like to serve you kangaroo meat.
Yes.
How do you feel about eating Skippy?
Look, it wouldn't be my go-to, although I know some very fit, lean people that are big on it, like health fanatics that love a bit of kangaroo meat. Apparently it's very good for you. Yeah.
She's serving you a kangaroo burger on soft potato bread roll with lettuce, tomato and pickles. What would you like to serve our next guest?
Oh, I do a very good whole snapper with horizontally sliced lemon, lots of parsley, garlic, thinly sliced potatoes, and a little bit of like a red sauce. And I bake it because I feel like when I have whole fish, I'm in Greece. There's something about whole fish which is very cultural, like when you go to a Chinese restaurant and they debone it. And so I would serve that, I think, because it is so delicious. And it's not typical. And it's, it's a dish that my dad used to make for us. So we love that dish.
Now, this is your opportunity to ask me a question. Off you go.
Well, I know and love you, and we've seen each other through some pretty difficult, interesting things. And I watched you, I suppose, battle with whether you should become a dad or not, even though it's something that you wanted so deeply. So how did you feel? I would say this to you because I was with you when you were telling me that you were having twins. How did you feel when you first realized that you just met two of the biggest loves of your life? How did you feel around that? Because I know you were scared because it was one more than you expected.
One more than I expected. There are actually 4, if you remember quite rightly, but that's a bigger story for later. Looking back on where I am now, I'm absolutely in love with these little fellas. But there was no way I had any idea back then it was going to be what it is now. I think it's the love, but the attention that is required. I just didn't think I had it in me, and I proved to myself time and time again that I must show up. I must show up in every aspect of my life for them. Like I've really you use that word authentic. I have to be authentic for them because I want them to be authentic for themselves. And where are they going to learn it? They're not going to learn it from the kids at school or the television. They're going to learn it from me. So it's a huge responsibility. And the other day I was brushing Leo's hair and he said, "Papa, when are you going to stop brushing my hair?" And I said, "When you're 25.
Yeah.
Like I'll brush it forever."
Oh, I love that. But I also think, isn't it the most romantic relationship ever too?
Yes.
There's just the physical, the tactile nature of how we communicate what we feel towards these beautiful, cute, curious, often, terrorizing humans. I mean, it's the romance.
Without a doubt.
The romance is next level.
One quick last question. Now, you say, and it's in the book, you see funny everywhere. That's both a gift and a lens on life. Why is comedy your default?
Because I'm way too serious. Because laughter is the thing that allows me to let the joy through. Because I look at life as a pretty important and serious sort of proposition. So I think that it is the lubricant that loosens me up.
Mary Moore, a big thanks to you and the first penis that you ever saw.
Yes.
You're forever grateful for it, and we're forever grateful for you. Why? Buy Mary's book to find out. Nasekala, Mary Moore.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just need Mary to camera just to introduce your episode. So, hi, this is Mary Coustas, and you can catch me on the next episode of 3 Food Memories with the gorgeous Savva or something.
Let's make this like a tone.
No. No.
Hi, I'm Mary Coustas, and you can catch the next episode of 3 Food Memories with my bestie Savva next week. Or what was the?
Just redo that because you have the headphones on. No, but I want one more anyway. It's just.
Oh, am I too far away?
No, not next week. No, it's going to be the next day.
Ah.
Do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about? And don't forget to buy my book.
Oh yeah.
Pimp the book.
Hi.
I think that was the sound. Still sounds good. But yeah, be fine. So.
You can see. All good. Oh, I might bring this here. Should I bring it close?
Hold it up.
Okay.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Mary Coustas, and I'll be appearing on the next episode of 3 Food Memories with my bestie Savva, and it's out tomorrow. And I'm also plugging my book, MaryPause. So I hope you get a copy. It's very funny.
Done. What was our timing?
An hour 26.
Good.
Yeah, very good.